So now we're just going to talk about the setup phase of the aquarium. So first of all, once you get your aquarium into position, you get your water in and filtration running, you get your salt dissolved and your level up to 0.023 and your temperature to 25 degrees. Then you're ready for the live rock phase. The live rock phase is often fairly unpleasant because you need to go through your live rock cycling. So what that basically means is we put the live rock into the aquarium, aquascaped using various tricks and techniques, such as the ability to make bommies. This bommie here is made with a piece of PVC through the centre, 15mm. So what I've actually done is drilled a hole out of the live rock, slid the live rock over the PVC, then drilled the hole out of the next live rock, slid it over, until we've created this very natural looking bommie effect. A lot of these other rocks wouldn't actually sit in the positions that they're in, so what we did is we made a saddle. The way we made the saddle was by getting two pieces of rock, fishing line them together and then put them over the top of the reef, which we've naturally made through the centre, allowing a lot of the rocks to be suspended in positions that they wouldn't naturally stay. So there's plenty of different little tricks and techniques you can use to try and make yourself as many caves and get as much elevation as possible. The double-sided aquariums are always tricky because we don't get the privilege of the shelves and the walls. People very often use shelves, especially if it's against the wall, because then you can lay the shelf down. One of the things that you're trying to do is to minimise the contact with the substrate. So if you've got a rock, instead of putting a large rock straight onto the bottom, wherever possible try and touch on points, because where the detritus tends to gather with time is at the base of the rock. So if we can minimise how much rock is touching the base, then we tend to minimise the amount of detritus that builds up in the aquarium. Once our live rock is in the aquarium, what we're then doing is allowing a time of generally 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the rock. So some rock will take 1 week to cure, other rocks will take 4 or even longer to cure. The way that you know when your rock is cured is you've tested your temperature and your salt level and your pH. You look after them in the early stages. Then once the rock goes in, you'll start having ammonia nitrite. Once the ammonia and the nitrite's gone down, that means that you're at the end of your cycle. At that point you'll often get little bits of nitrate. If that's the case, then you can just do some small water changes, or with time and the formation of denitrifying bacteria, that won't become such an issue. During this startup phase or this startup cycle, we often get some blooms of undesirable algae, such as diatom algae, which is the light brown growth that will often grow all over the aquarium. The more corals you have after the initial rocks cycle, generally the less embedded the algae will become, so the less algae problems you have with more coral if your water parameters are checking out to be good. So you go through a diatom phase where it goes very brownish, very much on the coral sand. Don't stress about it too much. At most just give it a bit of a stir, and remember that once that initial water is running out of silicants that it feeds on, then it'll usually change to a bit of a green algae. Then with the presence of the high calcium and very hard water, then you'll end up with the calcareous algae, which are the coralline algae which will be growing on the rock, which signals that the tank is really well established. So once you're over your curing period, then and your levels are checked out fine, that's when you introduce your corals. You can introduce corals relatively quickly and in a relatively flexible time frame. For example, you can put a few in, next week you can put a few more in, the week after that you can put a few more in. The rules for the fish don't necessarily apply. So with the fish we put, at the end of the cycling period, we'll put a few fish in the aquarium, we put no more in for 1 month, then a few more fish in, then no more in for 1 month, which we've covered quite extensively. As far as the corals are concerned, it's almost like the sooner the better. And we put a lot of corals into the aquarium, let them establish photosynthetic alternatives over the algae. So generally the tanks that get mega algae problems tend to not have many corals at the start. Tanks that they go boom and in goes lots and lots of corals don't ever tend to have the algae problems, because the corals become a nutrient alternative for all your photosynthetic energy as opposed to the algae. Now, different types of lighting systems that are available will allow you different flexibility in types of corals that you can grow. Now, there's some sorts of corals which, particularly shallow water corals in the wild, require really quite high intensity lighting. Now, different systems which provide different lighting will vary the flexibility of the types of corals that you can grow. Now, typically, the shallower water the corals, the more intense light they need. Now, this aquarium here is equipped with combination lighting, which has got the metal halide lights, which means that it's emphasizing the middle of the day. It's got the actinic lights, and it's got the standard full spectrum light tubes. So the way this tank here is actually set on timers. So the way this tank is set up is the blue lights come on in the morning, then about half an hour after that the full spectrum tubes come on, then say an hour or two after that the metal halides come on. You can either stagger them, so one comes on, then an hour later the other one comes on, then one metal halide goes off, then the other metal halide goes off, then the full spectrum lights go off, then the actinics go off. What that's basically just doing is stimulating the sun coming up in the morning and the sun going down at night. Now, employing the use of some very simple timers, aquariums like this can also be set to various moods. Like this aquarium has got the effect of a calm day where the current's going in a clockwise direction. It's also got the effect of a calm day with the current going in an anti-clockwise direction, just by having some water pumps which are set on timers. It's also got a high tide and a low tide, which just increases the effect, and it doesn't seem to make that much difference to your coral growth or extensions, but it certainly makes the tank a lot more interesting. Another very natural and pleasant effect that the metal halides create is this rippling effect.